It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
Hi, and welcome to S for Science. And these were the words that Neil Armstrong pronounced on July 21st, 1969, when he became the first human being to walk on the surface of the moon. It became a feat of humanity. But did humans really reach the moon? Surely many times you've heard a lot of arguments for and against this feat. You may have heard that the Apollo moon landings were a fraud, that in reality we never reached the moon, that it was all a gigantic US conspiracy to pretend victory in the space race against the USSR. The main evidence of a fraud is in the photographs sent by the missions, which show a series of inconsistencies and impossible facts that evidence this montage and show that everything was a hoax, the biggest and darkest in the history of NASA. One of the arguments most used by the detractors is the case of the flag, the famous USA flag that waves in some photos. Even though we all know that the moon has no atmosphere, therefore no wind, then why in some photos and videos it looks like the flag is waving? In this video you can see that the US flag had a mast on the top so it could stay extended. The astronauts were moving the flag when it was placed, and it had wrinkles and ripples for being folded during the trip, which gave an appearance in the video that can be confused with that of a waving flag. In some videos recorded on the moon, you can see that the flag is not completely still. It continues to oscillate a little, and it is where the NASA is accused of falsifying the images. How is it possible that the flag keeps waving if there's no wind? Well, precisely this is the answer. Since there is no wind, there is no friction on the moon to stop the flag, in the same way that the Earth rotates around the sun without ever stopping. And it's after a long time when the flag really stops because of the friction caused by the two masts. Well, okay, but then how can it be that the photos that have been sent don't show any stars if there's no atmosphere on the moon and also the sky is always black? This question can be answered very easily. Wait until it is a night with many stars and a full moon and try to take a picture of the moon with your mobile phone. How many of the thousands of stars that you could see on the sky show in the picture? None. When something is photographed with so much apparent light, those with much less luminosity do not appear portrayed, in this case, the stars, unless long exposure cameras are used or with an advanced configuration. What happens in your photo, it's the same on the moon. And it's not because of the Earth's atmosphere that the stars don't show. Just look at some images of the International Space Station. As you can see, stars don't show despite being on space. Either way, NASA has on its website an extensive archive of photos taken on the Apollo missions that do show stars. But it cannot be that in the 1960s we went to the moon and that now, with the space technology that we have not returned. This shows the fraud. We have not returned for a simple reason. It was not practical to put a human being on the moon. It was extremely expensive and dangerous. It was simply a show of power during the Cold War, a symbolic act. But in fact, we returned to the moon on 5 more occasions, and in total 12 people came to set foot on our satellite, and they dedicated to do scientific tasks that require human ability. Once this was done, it no longer made sense to send human beings, since the vast majority of the tasks could and can be perfectly carried out by probes and robots that are much more cheaper. But why do we have to believe all this? They are all photos, some information. Is there any physical or tangible evidence? These are the retroreflectors installed by the astronauts on the Apollo missions 11, 14, and 15. There are complex mirrors used to bounce laser beams coming from Earth, which are used for various experiments. The installation of these mirrors is complex enough to require the human support of the astronauts. There are many observatories around the world where you can check the operation of these devices. You can go if you want. There are also in total 380 kilograms of rocks and lunar dust brought back from the moon, which have a series of characteristics impossible to reproduce with terrestrial rocks. These characteristics are produced by being exposed to solar radiation for millions of years without any protection from an atmosphere. They can be visited at various museums around the world, and there has been no scientist who has denied its origin. This photo belongs to the Apollo 12 mission that brought back to Earth fragments of the historic Lunar Surveyor 3 probe, a ship that had landed 3 years earlier in the same place where the crew arrived to analyze the soil. The fragments were analyzed by scientists from several countries around the world who confirmed that they really belonged to the Surveyor 3 and that they had been exposed to lunar conditions. These fragments are on display at the Smithsonian Air and Space Museum in Washington. And this man is Haynes Gaminsky, a German in charge of the Bochum Observatory, who independently followed the veracity of the Apollo 11 moon landing by capturing the audio sent from the Eagle lunar module to Earth. He is one of the many radio amateurs who on July 21st, 1969, recorded and followed on their own the Apollo 11 moon landing. Each of these transmissions show that such a feat was achieved, and best of all, they belong to testimonies that are not part of any country or any conspiracy. This image corresponds to the day of the launch of the Apollo 17, whose crew, 12 days later, on December 14th, 1972, left the moon, this being the last people who have visited our satellite. Since then, no human being have set foot on the surface of the moon. There are some missions proposed for future years, however none of them are confirmed at the moment. But on the moon there's a great treasure hidden. It is full of an isotope of hydrogen, a material that is the only viable fuel for the future. So every day we are closer to the return to the moon. So really, the question that we should ask ourselves is not if the human being has reached the moon, but instead if we will return one day. Thank you very much for watching the video, and goodbye.